People of Reddit, what was the stupidest things your horniness made you do? There was a lot of junk in my house when I was younger, I think 12 or 13, and wanted to know what having sex was like. So I found this thing. I think it was a part of a lifting fitting or something. Either way, it was round and had a hole at each end. A cylinder with no ends, basically. My teenage brain said that the tube was too small to put my erect penis in. So the sensible thing to do would be to stuff it in flaccid, then get hard when I'm already in. This turned out, to the surprise of nobody, to be a fucking horrible idea. The more erect I became, the more it constricted my penis. I tried just pulling it off, but it was on there fast. I went to the water and ran cold water on my penis to try to make it go down. I hoped on that day that I had not learned what sex was like. Masturbated so frequently, with such force, I gave myself sores and blisters, which I had to see a doctor about. Didn't see the doctor, too embarrassed. Got infected, really had to see a doctor, which was less embarrassing than I had imagined. I know this guy who fucked an orange once. In like the 6th grade, this motherfucker was so horny, he put a whole ass orange in the microwave, then proceeded to go to town on that shit. After he was finished, he lobbed it into his neighbor's yard and went on with his night. I used to share a room with my younger brother. We had bunk beds and I was on the top bunk. One night, I drenched my penis in Vaseline and went to town because I thought he was sleeping. I heard him say something, so I grabbed the railing of my bed and leaned over. My hands were covered in Vaseline, so I slipped off the railing and fell naked onto his bed with Vaseline covered hands and a boner. Got caught with pants down. A Filipino scammer catfished me and recorded me masturbating. He threatened to send the video to everyone on my friends list on Facebook. I stalled him for a while till I could delete all of my socials. Lesson: privacy settings are a thing for a reason. My college boyfriend flew in to visit me, and my conservative parents made it their business to have at least one of them home at all times. And my mom was also a light sleeper, so doing it in the house wasn't going to work either. So in a desperate attempt, I led us to this creepy woodshed on a property behind my parents' house. I quickly learned that bare butts and freshly chopped firewood don't mix. I found splinters in parts of my body that there should never be splinters. Even worse, a few days after this, the groundskeeper was chatting with my parents and I heard him telling that the shed was crawling with black widow spiders. A nest hatched and they were everywhere. Friend back in high school relayed to me that fucking a microwave banana peel with olive oil inside of it feels like a vagina. So naturally, having then never tried a real human vagina, I grabbed the banana for a snack after coming home one day and stashed the peel away. When nobody was home, I grabbed that peel, olive oiled it up, and microwaved for about a minute. Way too fucking long. In my excitement, I dropped it and penetrated the scalding peel, burning the shit out of my wiener. It was terrible. Absolutely 0 out of 10. Wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Suffice to say that it felt nothing like a real vagina. Drove an hour to a girl's house, only to be met there by her parents pointing a gun to my face at the door. I had no idea she was with anyone, let alone married. I explained to the guy that there was no way I'd risked it going there if I knew she was married, and he believed me. I got in my car and raced it all the way back to the freeway. Losing my virginity outdoors while having the flu. Not only that, we ended up screwing in a bed of nettles. I didn't notice because it was so dark outside. My ass and thighs were covered in nettle stings, and they itched for a few weeks after. Not me, but my brother. Came home from school one day, and I find a hairbrush shitting on the counter, the handle covered in Vaseline. I immediately knew what that meant, and didn't look any closer. Skip a week or two later, I walk into the bathroom and this old antique plunger we have was in the way of the toilet. I go to move it out of the way, but when I touch it, I find it's also covered in Vaseline. I quickly washed my hand and left to find another bathroom. A guy from work just drove 4 hours round trip to see a girl he met on a dating site that was horny and also wet, and can't wait till you get here, just for her to ghost him when he got there. Also, for some reason, he had the gumption not to book the hotel she suggested. Left one booty call's house after finishing to drive to another booty call's house, who lived further away from me than I thought, and I accidentally crossed a toll bridge in my mom's car, so a month later, she sat me down asking what the hell I was doing across the toll bridge with her car at 2 a.m. That was a nice combo. Was having some substance-enhanced sex with my ex. And we were both so into it, I told her I was gonna come in a shot glass and she was going to have to shoot it. As soon as the load came, I vividly remember grabbing the shot from her hand and said, "No baby, you're not doing that. I am." That shot of nastiness went down the toilet. When I was 15, I lost my virginity to a girl who was 14. I was so stupid and wanted it to happen again, I ended up buying her a hamster and a cage with toys and food. It was like almost $80, and that was all my fucking money I had. Lol. I was a shy and weird 11-year-old who's got a huge crush on two of the prettiest girls in class. Rode my bike to an abandoned bridge, wrote my crush's name on my penis, and whispered, "I love you, Ela. I love you, Joanne." Tried to take a dildo that was way too big on my ass, with minimal prepping or stretching. Ended up literally tearing myself a new asshole. Still dealing with anal fissure, which makes pooping really painful, and which is probably going to last for weeks at the very least. Got a pukey blowjob and ended up with the UTI for a month. I'm talking green pus coming out of my cock like artificial guacamole. I had so many medications turn my piss different colors, orange, red, blue, but in the end, it was me getting hydrated one day and drinking a bunch of Fireball whiskey. My stoned ass was going to fight this thing with fire from the inside. I'm going to say that at the end of the day, it was the medication, but that one day of letting loose with the Fireball, where it kinda turned around and disappeared. Then it was all gone. I started dating again, and I met the person I'm going to marry. So that was dope. This happened a few years ago, so I'll describe it best I can. Back in my sophomore year, I would do homework in the garage because it was the quietest place in the house. One time after doing some difficult literature, my hormones kicked in. Being a hormone-addled teenager, I pulled out my phone. It was dead. I couldn't go grab a charger because I knew my mom would say I'm slacking, and my computer was an old desktop at the time. My brother was in the room. Essentially disconnected from the internet, I racked my brain for a solution. Then it realized the answer was right in front of me. Channeling my horny determination, I then proceeded to write a 2-page long erotica. It was supposed to be longer, but I got impatient. After I finished using it, the post-nut clarity hit me like a sledgehammer. I proceeded to tear it as much as I could, and burned the result that was left. A few months later, after getting a laptop, I wrote what I remembered of the story on it. But maybe one day I'll relive it like a reanimated Frankenstein monster. I hooked up with a clearly crazy, older woman at work when I was in my 20s. She didn't tell me she was back with her ex, fiance, and eventually he found out. So then I broke it off and was sexually harassed on and off by her for a few months until I quit for other reasons. My ex sucked my dick outside near some gardens in our hometown around late afternoon. We were naive and horny, so we didn't really think about someone catching us. We hid behind a tree and she did her thing. A few minutes in, we hear someone laughing behind us, only to see it was an elderly couple walking past us about 50 meters away. We stopped, went in a different place outside, and I could finally shoot it out. First time I came from getting head, by the way. At 15, wise years of age, I opted for Vicks Vapo Rub instead of Vaseline to rub one out. After 30 seconds of furious stroking, I realized the severity of my mistake. Shit burned for hours. On my side note, my love gun smelled like mint for a day. I drove 7 states for a blowjob from a middle school crush. We're in our 30s now. I had 71 in my bank account. Here's the full story. I had a crush in middle school when I was 10 years old. She moved away half through 6th grade. We reconnected via social media when I was in college at age 20. My roommate at the time jokingly told me he'd ride with me 7 states to see her. We packed and were on the road by 7 p.m. and arrived at her house around 7 a.m. It was January in the Northeast. When we were leaving, I met a girl across in the hall in my apartment complex, who we told the story to, and she told us we were fools and we all laughed. The next morning, I woke up around 11 a.m. to my roommate hanging out with my chick's mom, drinking bourbon and making pancakes. We hung out for 3 days and she showed us the city and she blew me the last night. One of the all-time worst beej I've ever received. We did long distance or whatever for like a month before I told her this was dumb. I started dating the girl across the hall a few months later. We're married and have 4 kids. When I was younger, I was super horny and opened the fridge to find a lubricant. For some reason, my eyes scanned to the medium salsa. This ended with tears and running water over my urethra. Not pleasant. I was 14 and jerked off in class, mid-lesson with 31 classmates who were trying to trigger our poor physics teacher. Good for me, not a single soul noticed, but damn, my life would have been ruined if someone caught me. Back in the days before internet-ish, around age 16, I somehow managed to get a porn magazine. I ripped a single page out, and the best of all pages, and took it with me to the bathroom. I also needed to shower at this time, which worked out well. 2 birds, 1 stone. Well, in the heat of the moment, the page ended up being brought into the shower. 2 hours later, while playing a random Nintendo game, it dawned on me that I left it in the shower, hanging on the shower wall around eye level. I panicked and ran in there to discover it was gone. I was totally mortified. I will never know which one of my 3 family members discovered it. No one ever mentioned it, but for over 20 years, I've hoped and prayed it wasn't my extremely religious grandmother. That magazine was one of those back alley gas station porns too. The kind they put behind all the other ones, with the darkened plastic on it to hide the cover. Half the people in it didn't even trim their junk. It was some heavy shit, man. I once had a friend when I was 18. He told me he was gonna get me laid. Met a 46-year-old woman in a Safeway parking lot. We fucked later that day. I can't say it was good. It was weird. There was like 4 people in the house. While I'm tapping it, they all introduced themselves. I'm not even sure what kind of situation I was in. After, she fed me, drank, gave me a 6-pack of beer, and a half a pack of cigarettes. I guess in my mind, I was like, score! Years later, I questioned myself about that day frequently. Sneak over to my GF's grandma's house to be with my GF, only to be caught in my boxers by her parents. Have the cops called, then allowed to leave before the cops showed up, because her parents were only mad at her, I guess. Never understood why they didn't have me arrested for trespassing. So I was living with my dad when I was 17. My dad and his girlfriend were going to Mexico for a week, and I was having a girl I was really into coming over for drinks that night. I dropped my old man off at the airport first thing in the morning and started planning what ended up being me losing my V card. When my dad calls me and says he can't go, he had a record and there was a layover in the States. So I pick him up and my dumb virgin ass convinced my father that it would be a good idea to try to cross the border and catch a flight to Mexico from there, because it's not like they're not gonna let you leave. In my defense, this grown man listened to a horny 17-year-old. So he gets detained at the border after he has totally given up. I just tell him straight up that I was having a girl over and I was hoping this would go somewhere. This legend says he will go to my aunt's for the evening, and I can have the girl over. Words cannot describe how much my dad was my best friend. After I nearly got him arrested at the border, he still wingmaned me. Oh damn, I was a very horny teen, and still am at 28. I ended up finding an old school pocket pussy my dad owned and some penthouse mags from the 80s. I would take that pocket pussy from his closet every time I was home alone, which was a lot, and would go to town. One night, I forgot to clean it and put it back, so I just kept it. I didn't want him to see it magically appear back in his closet, so I thought the best thing to do was to keep it. I fucked that thing so often. When I actually lost my virginity, I couldn't come, cause it didn't feel as good. So that's how I ended up actively going out of my way to have sex with an interested partner, because I knew it would take like 40 minutes to come, and they would think I wasn't attracted to them or something. In all honesty, I just jerk off a lot now. Go to a strip club in the Quartier Pigalle in Paris. This was their red light district, fairly close to the Moulin Rouge. In 1998, classic rip joint. Got drawn in by a barker promising belle femme. Drank a Coke, watched a couple ordinary looking women take their tops off. Got conned into buying one a drink with vague promises of more sexual stuff. Finally wised up, partly because I noticed I was the only patron in the place. I showed up to leave and got presented with a bill for 900 francs, which is roughly $150. About $240 today. Not a ton of money, but not insignificant. The bill was presented by a rather large man who hadn't been visible until about 2 seconds after I stood up. Luckily, I had cash on me. If I'd presented them with a credit card, God knows how much they'd charged on it. I feel like I got off light. Sent nude photos to people with who I was not close with. I was lonely and never got any appreciation from boys, so had a really low self-esteem. It was amazing when I finally got compliments. Unfortunately, I usually felt bad about it, even back then as well, but now I regret it 100%. I know it's not a big deal for a lot of people, but I just feel like it wasn't me. I'm scared that those pictures got uploaded to the internet and could cause serious problems to me anytime. On a date with an ex of mine, we met up in this really nice seafood restaurant. My ex unbuttoned my pants, pulled out my dick, and stroked me right there at the table. We didn't get caught, but I hadn't had sex for a couple weeks and left lots of spunk all over the table leg and floor. I hate that. My horniness made me do things I regret. Once I was home with my younger siblings, but my boyfriend wanted to come over. We wanted to do it, but I have 4 siblings in a tiny apartment, so we just laid down in the couch of the living room and put a blanket over us and started doing it. My siblings were talking to us, and I don't think they suspected anything. I told them to stop. I felt super weird and regret everything. Going through puberty was rough. I once asked my lesbian friend if she wanted to have sex. She didn't look excited about the idea, but asked if I even had a condom. I didn't, and suggested plastic wrap or a piece of garbage. When I was in my early teens, I would fill up the bathtub and mix it with shampoo and some sort of liquid soap, then proceed to lay face down and rub myself against the soapy bath to jerk myself off until I reached climax. Back in my first year of university, when Yik Yak was a thing, somebody made a post wondering if anyone wanted to hook up. For those who don't know, Yik Yak was basically an app where you posted messages that anyone in your area could read. I messaged this person saying I wanted to hook up. He messaged me back asking for my email. And for some stupid reason, I used my school email, which had my full name on it. The guy, who had used a non-school email address, smart, emailed me back saying he knew me and he wouldn't tell me who he was when I asked. I was so embarrassed and tried to play it off like my roommate had gotten a hold of my phone and messaged him, but it was obvious he knew I was lying. I walked around campus in a cloak of eternal shame for about a week. Not the stupidest compared to these posts, but the most embarrassing for me. Okay, so I didn't really know at the time that I was masturbating, but in 3rd grade, I used to do this thing where I rubbed myself down there, and one day, My school had this thing where you brought a blanket and a pillow/stuffed animal and read all day. Anyway, my teacher was filming the class for IDKY and ended up posting on Facebook, and in that video, you could see me pleasuring myself in the corner. I only found out about this from my mom yelling at me because she saw the video. To make a long story short, I masturbated in 3rd grade and it got posted to Facebook. My jerk-off story is that when I was 12, I decided I needed to fuck something. So I found a bottle of juice and drank what was left, lubed it up, and just went for it. It was very tight, and just trying hurt like a bitch, but I was convinced it would be awesome. Fast forward, and I'm panicking as I can't get my dick out and my erection won't go away. Everything was okay, but I've never felt fear like that before, or after. The thought of having to go to my parents at 2 a.m. to show them what I'd done still haunts me. Sex-wise, the stupidest thing I've done is fucking a girl who gets around, raw. When I go to pull out, she asked me to nut inside her, and in that moment, it sounded fantastic, so I did. About a month later, she's pregnant, but wasn't sure who the dad was. Luckily, it wasn't me, but lesson learned. Was too eager to get in and went too fast, and snapped my banjo string. Blood everywhere, including my nana's couch. They were on vacation, and I was responsible to check on their cat while away. So I was using their house as my teenage bang house with my girlfriend at the time. I flipped the couch cushions only for the bloodstain to be discovered years later when my grandma had passed, and I was helping my dad clear out their house. Awkward knowing what those stains were, and my dad had no idea. Hooked up with a guy right outside on the porch of his apartment. It made sense at the time because he didn't want to wake his roommate, and they lived in a studio apartment where there weren't separate rooms for them not to hear us. Come to find out later, the roommate was actually his girlfriend. My ex-fiance was a sex addict. The sex with him was incredible, and my libido outpaced his, so we were constantly turning each other on. It was mind-blowingly wonderful. Unfortunately, he was my first serious relationship. I didn't realize that sex was the only thing keeping us together. I let my horniness get the better of me, and we got engaged. I had completely ignored the gaslighting, manipulation, love bombing, and insults. He was also cheating on me, manifestation of the addiction, but constantly denied it and got angry at me for not trusting him. So yeah, don't let your horniness trap you in a toxic relationship. I'm still struggling from the effects of the abuse 4 years after the fact. Not me, but a friend of mine. One day we were heading to the beach. He was the only one in our group who owned a car, so we relied on him. Once we got there, his girlfriend calls him, horny as fuck from what I gathered, and he goes, "Sorry boys, you'll have to take the train back." But not even 20 minutes after, he gets pulled over by cops, because he was way above speed limits. Apparently, he was going so fast, they took his driver's license on the spot. The thing is, losing his license also meant losing his job. Poor bastard. Masturbated with a beer bottle because I didn't have a toy with me. For some reason, I figured if it was full, unopened, it was less likely to break. It didn't, but then I wanted to watch it happen to someone else. One night, around midnight, I was watching some miscellaneous productions. They're a YouTuber talking about mythologies and history, but in a simple animation art style. But during the video of them talking about, I think was Pandora or the Greeks' mythologic take on the Trojan War, I don't know. I've masturbated at the sight of either Pandora or Athena, but mind you, they're drawn in a simplistic manner. Just search miscellaneous productions on YouTube and you'll know how simplistic their art style is. I was so horny that I masturbated to a vaguely feminine body. I guess I was just very tired that night. Not a story I'm very proud of. Back during my college days, in the late 90s, there was a guy who ran the LGBT club at the college I went to. He seemingly had no concept of how to take care of himself, always showed up with dirty clothes, usually had food around his mouth. His hair was always disheveled, like he just crawled out of bed. However, he was the nicest dude and had a naive charm about him. One night, after a meeting, a bunch of us went out for some drinks. Afterwards, this guy and I were talking and I'm like, "So where's your dorm?" He's like, "You want to see my place?" I said, "Yeah," and he takes me there. We end up taking off our clothes and jerking off together. What I didn't know was that he had this schoolboy crush on me, and I had totally made his night. To me, it was just a random hookup. To him, I had completely broken his heart. I felt awful, but I had to be honest with him and tell him I had no interest in him romantically. It was one of the most soul-crushing moments. I went to Catholic school when I was 16. It was required that we did hours of community service, and my dad's coworker, who was a recovering addict of some sort, told my dad I could go to the halfway house he worked at and get my hours done. So I did. Why would my dad allow this? I thought this guy was so freaking hot one day, I had the brilliant idea of seducing him when he was signing off on my hours. I sat on his desk, spread my legs, looked him in the eye, and told him to fuck me. He told me he couldn't and wouldn't and rejected me. Thank God. And yeah, now I am 30 and very embarrassed. Check his Instagram every once in a while with his wife and child on there and wonder if he remembers what the heck I did. Got drunk with a bunch of friends drinking moonshine. Friend number 1 got frisky, wanted to bang, and then friend number 2 mentioned threesome. Friend number 1 was all for it, then changed her mind and decided to drag me outside and try in her car, then proceeded to puke all over me and her car. TLDR, don't have sex after drinking moonshine with a lightweight. I did sort of an American Pie thing when I was 17, and I used a great big bowl of homemade jello to jack off. And it was at that moment that I came when I realized I fucked up. Cause after all, I have no fucking clue how to make jello. Still to this day. So yeah, my mom got home, saw the hole and cum in the center of the jello. Let's just say I got my ass handed to me for that one. Drove 2 hours to hang out with a girl. Was promised movies and cuddles. You know what that means. But then when I got there, she said her roommates were home, but said we could drive around. Drove around, found a quiet place to park overlooking the town. Talked a few hours, actually good convo. So I still wanted to shoot my shot, but turned me down because, sorry, I don't do it in vehicles. Ended up spending 8 straight hours in my pickup overall, and wasted a ton of gas for a conversation. I was supposed to meet a guy I met on Tinder for dinner, and then go back to his place. A few days before, our horniness got to us, and he asked me to come over to his place. I never met this guy before, and only talked to him on Tinder, but still agreed and went over. We had a good time, and still see each other, but I look back on that, and think, what the hell did I do? Going over to a complete stranger's house, just for sex? That's insane. I didn't even tell anyone I was going there. Oh God. I used to steal my parents' porn VHS tapes to masturbate. One time, I passed out after I was done and forgot to return the tape. I came home to my parents quite pissed off. When they went to look for their favorite Gina Jameson video, they found it in my VCR player. They ended up hiding the videos in a much better spot that I eventually found. My dumbass thought, well, just don't do that video anymore. Popped in an unmarked tape instead, and was confused as fuck as to why the set looked like my house. Needless to say, I put that shit back and stopped stealing their tapes. Drunk sex with my husband. He was about to come, pulled too far back on the thrust, forward hit my pubic bone. His dick somehow went into my hood hard enough, while coming, ripped my labia and hood. It's really awkward being covered in jizz and blood. Lol. Let a girl dress me up before joining her on her girls' night out. We were having drinks at her place, so when she was getting ready, she was throwing clothes everywhere. So I grabbed a thong that landed near me and placed them on my lap like I was wearing them. So she got the idea that I could join them, so I wore her underwear and a tight pair of jeans that fit me. Her friends were really hot, so I went along knowing I would be the only guy there. She made it a point to let them know I was wearing her clothes and whatnot, so anytime I bent over, I tried to make sure the thong was showing. They even asked if I wanted to join them going into the washroom. Nothing happened that night, but buzzed and horny me let her talk me into it. I was at a party with my girl best friend, I'm a guy, and we were playing Truth or Dare with a group of 7 to 8 people. She got dared to kiss her best friend. This got me so excited, I rushed to the bathroom, whipped good old Johnny out, and nutted in probably 45 seconds.